Service your existing car with us right now.
And it's worth £500 off your next car.
Yes, at Macklin Motors Toyota, we'll give you a £500 voucher off any of our brand new Toyotas when you book in for a service with our expert Toyota trained technicians.
We even have complimentary courtesy cars available, so book your service now and get £500 off any new Toyota.
Visit macklinmotors.co.uk or see us at Kennishead Road, Darnley.
Macklin Motors, the new name for Toyota sales and servicing in Glasgow.
Valid on services till 30th September. Excludes Motability and fleet customers. One £500 voucher per vehicle purchased by 31st December.
The Go Radio Football Show with MacklinMotors.com, representing some of the biggest motoring manufacturers across Scotland.
Let's go!
Well, as Rangers go down 2-0 away to Union SG, can they turn it around next Tuesday at Ibrox? We're going to ask Barry Ferguson, Peter Grant in a moment or two. Alfredo Morelos, surely he will be back for next week. Will he be? Barry might have the inside track on that, but he always says he's his first pick on the Rangers team sheet. And no return date yet for John Souttar as he undergoes medical checks. Jota admits that goal at the weekend, he said it was the best of his career. Celtic fans, what do you feel with the season ahead? 08, 08, 17, 17, 700. But it's a familiar territory for Celtic fans watching their team trying to qualify for the Champions League. It's so tough at this time of the year. Barry, last night, how disappointed? What do you think of the performance?
Yeah, it was a sore one. Look, I was very surprised at the level of performance that Rangers put in. Certainly since Giovanni's come in. One thing about the Rangers team, they've had good quality about them, a lot of energy, but I thought last night they were really flat. I just used the word energy. There was no energy about them. And the only positive thing I can take out the game last night, Paul, is they get away with one. It's 2-0. It could have been 3 or 4. John McLaughlin making a couple of good saves, Tavernier clearing one off the line towards the end. So listen, they've got a game against them next Tuesday. They're still in the tie, and that's the only positive I can take out of it.
Going to ask you more in a second or two. 08, 08, 17, 17, 700. And we're on the socials. Loads of messages coming in at Go Football Show. Barry Ferguson, Peter Grant. Peter, you've seen this before. You go in with great expectations to get into the Champions League, but you did say about Union SG, you'd seen a bit of them. This thing happens.
Absolutely. I'd said 2 years ago they were in the second or the first division, but you would call it then. They'd done exceptionally well when they came into the main league, or leading it at one stage, and I'm always concerned that we don't give the respect to the name because it wasn't an Anderlecht or a Genk or whatever like that. Always a bit concerned. And it only takes a bad performance. I was speaking to Barry about it because I never seen the game. I was at East Kilbride, Broomhill, watching that game. And I was speaking to Barry about the game and the disappointment on the performance. And sometimes it is that domino effect when somebody's not playing particularly well and trying to get their legs. At this part of the season, we've seen it with Celtic for many years, trying to get into these competitions, and not one of the games is easy. So difficult. But you need your teams to perform. And if they don't perform, you end up with the results you got last night.
Some of the messages coming in, Barry. Tired, lethargic, uneventful, lacking creation. That's Mike M. Here's Michelle T on saying, bring back Alan McGregor and we miss Morelos. What do you think, first of all, about the goalkeeper? John McLaughlin.
Well, I think if you asked John McLaughlin, he would say he should have saved it. Look, I've always said that I think John McLaughlin's a very good goalkeeper. He has got to save that. And the flip side of that, he did make a couple of good saves after that. So he would be disappointed in letting that goal in. But look, you know my thoughts on Alan McGregor. I still think he's the best keeper in Scotland. But listen, Gio's made a decision.
Would Alan McGregor have saved that?
It's easy to say. Listen, it's took a slight deflection. I expect John McLaughlin to save that. And I think if you ask Big John himself, he would fully expect to save that. But as it stands, it looks to me if John McLaughlin is Rangers number one.
He won't change it? You don't think this weekend?
No, but I'm very doubtful he will change it. I do believe that Alan McGregor is still the best goalkeeper at Rangers, but I think Gio's made his mind up.
It's so important, that position. And up front at the other end of the park, what about Morelos? Do you think he'll be back for Tuesday?
Well, he's been training with the team. Look, I know Peter's thoughts on Morelos. Look, I've maintained throughout his Rangers career, I do really like him when he's on it. He's a real handful. Is he going to be match fit? No, he ain't. But for me, I think he's so important to Rangers. I think you've got to gamble and throw him in.
Peter, they missed him badly last night. Cholak is just different. You can see
it's tough. Listen, it's tough. A new player coming to a club. I just believe Morelos in the Rangers starting 11. Rangers are a better team.
Peter?
His big performances were in Europe last year, there's no doubt of that. As I say, my biggest thing with him is he never seems to be fit. And it's such an important game for Rangers, next week. I mean, that's my question mark over Davis not playing at the back, giving him a natural balance as a left-sider. If he's fit enough to be on the bench, not just in one game, I know sometimes that can happen, you can bring them back, but if he's not fit enough and he's a natural defender and you've paid £4 million for him, Gio can come on and say, oh, he's been injured, he's missed a lot of training. Fine, that's absolutely fine, because I'm not aware of that, but I would definitely be playing him, because then I think if you're strong at the back, you've got that quality, you've got a natural left-sider talking to Barry about the game. Sands kept coming in his right foot, which you normally do. Celtic had the same problem at the start of last season with Starfelt. You naturally come into your right hand side, and Celtic were playing obviously with the back four, but when you're playing that back three, 9 times out of 10 you want that left sider to get out as wide as he can to start attacks. And maybe the game getting slowed down, listening to Barry talking about the game getting slowed down, the ball being slow, the passing being slow. When teams are sitting deep against you, the one thing you have to do is move the ball quickly.
Yep. 100%. I said that. I was obviously speaking to Peter before we come on air, and that's the thing that was frustrating me last night. They obviously sat behind the ball to try and frustrate Rangers. You could see that early doors. You watched the game as well, Paul. But as Peter just says there, when teams do that, you've got to move them side to side quickly. You've got to have a bit of pace on the ball, 1 and 2 touch. And I just thought Rangers' play last night was really lethargic.
How can the team go from playing so brilliantly in Europe last season? I know it didn't go well at the beginning against Malmo, but that run all the way to the final. And I know there were a number of new players last night at the start, but most of the team are still there on the bench, or sure they're missing Bassett.
There was quite a few players that were involved in Europa League run last year. I don't think Gio would use that as an excuse. There's plenty of experience in there, European experience. Listen, it was just a bad night at the office. Rangers were really below par. And you could see it in Gio's interview after the game.
Looked shocked.
I think he was shell shocked with the performance. But listen, the beauty of being a football player, there's a game just round the corner, and I think a lot of positions are up for grabs come the game on Saturday, even against Kilmarnock.
You reckon it's good changes for this weekend?
Yeah, listen, that's why Rangers and Celtic run with big squads full of quality, because if you don't perform, somebody's at the sidelines willing to take your position.
Are they going to turn it round? Will they turn it round on Tuesday?
Yeah, I still believe Rangers have got enough quality in their squad. Ryan Kent obviously missing last night, who's been a big player not just domestically but also in Europe. Is Morelos going to come back? Peter's just spoke about Davis. Is he going to come in now? I fully expect him to come in. Yilmaz, I thought, come on and impressed me with the 20 or so minutes he had last night. So Gio's got a lot of decisions to make and a lot of choices.
0808 17 700 Glasgow in the West talking. First up is Colin from Bellshill. Good evening, Colin.
Hi guys.
Evening, Colin. Evening, Colin.
Yeah, Colin, what are you thinking?
I'm just thinking pretty much like Barry says there. I think Van Bronckhorst needs to make some big changes over the next few weeks, because Barisic has been looking very nervy. I think since the 3-0 Celtic game,
February.
I think since then, and I don't see John McLaughlin as a number one, because there against Livingston, it was him. He got caught off well off his line for that first goal against Livingston, and then that goal last night. I think he should have got it.
Sure. Let's throw those two then. First of all, at Barry and Peter. And we spoke about Alan McGregor. I think it was 6 months ago tonight was the game against Celtic at Celtic Park, where Borna Barisic, he hasn't really recovered from that, has he?
No, he's not. He's not recovered, and I think that's one of the reasons why Gio's looked to strengthen that left back area. You've seen Bassey come in and played in that position. Obviously Bassey's away now. He's brought Yilmaz in, and I fully expect Yilmaz to take that position. Look, Barisic is very, very good going forward. No doubt he's a really good attacking fullback. Defensively, he's always been suspect in my eyes.
Well, that's where Rangers were solid last year, if you look at it. You know, you've got young Sands coming in last night. I never seen the game, obviously, but you had Sands coming in. You've got Barisic who's no playing with great confidence, and that can sometimes have that snowball effect. You know, and Barry was saying he got a lot of the ball, but it was opportunity for him to run forward, which is his strength, and he's passing back or not going back, you know. And as soon as you start doing that, that's when you're not trusting yourself. And then it's difficult if you're going back to a right-sided left footer, you know what I mean? So it's not a natural left footer, sorry, and it's going back to a right-sider. So the ball's too slow then. So the opposition get an opportunity to bank in, you know, and make it difficult. John McLaughlin, I worked with John with the Scotland scenario, and John was a very, very good goalkeeper, and Alan and that was with him at the same time. He's a very, very good goalkeeper, there's no doubt, and I think he's done exceptionally well for Rangers when he's played in the games. He probably comes and gets more crosses than Alan, but if you remember last year at a period of time, a lot of people were saying that Alan should be out of the team. You know, I think we've got to be very careful. I've seen this situation with Celtic many times, and when they've had bad results in Europe and everything goes out the window. You listen to the manager was very honest last night. I was listening to his interviews after, obviously. He was very honest on his appraisal of the game, listening to Barry talking now, because that was exactly what the manager says. And sometimes managers try to hide it, you know, and say, oh, we're not at this level, we're not at that. He never. He just said we didn't play well enough, we weren't good enough on the evening, and we never had all our performances. It was very, very difficult to pick anybody above the level of a pass mark, and that's very unusual. If you've got a team like that, there is no chance you're winning.
Colin, I hear the two of them, Barry and Peter, saying John McLaughlin's a very good goalkeeper, but Alan McGregor's a great goalkeeper, so he either still is or he isn't. Does he not get his place back unless it goes wrong for him?
I think they probably came to that agreement.
Yeah, do you think so, Colin?
I think Colin said that, you know, as well.
Colin, what do you think?
I think you go with your best keeper, because having the best keeper at the back brings out the confidence in the defenders as well.
Barry, I know it's difficult.
I'm not going to sit here and you know what I think of John. I think he's a very good goalkeeper, but if you're putting Big John and Alan together, if you've got a choice, it's Alan McGregor all day long for me.
And they missed Ryan Kent, there's no question about that, isn't there? You could see it, and that was an injury he got on the plastic pitch at Livingston. It's time to rip up these plastic pitches.
When I was watching the game last night, that jumped out at me, how much Rangers missed both of their players. Look, the reason why you've got a big squad is, and with quality, players are going to get injured, going to get suspended, they'll come in, but they two players are big players for Rangers, and Rangers missed them last night.
This might be cruel, but somebody's been on, Big Davey, saying that Matondo is Fashion Sakala.
I think it's a bit too premature to
speed. But
yeah, he's got speed, but one thing I will say, last night I was watching it was frustrating me, and Grant, he's been a coach and a manager for a lot longer than me. He was coming towards the ball all the time with a guy with genuine pace. Grant, I was wanting him to go in behind.
Absolutely, and that's the one thing that breaks down, and that's what teams are all frightened of, is pace. You know, and that's what one thing Kent, as I say, I thought probably played his best games. I'd seen him against Dortmund both, and going with the ball and defending. It was in Dortmund, I thought he was magnificent. But you've got to remember, you've got like say Kent that missing, Morella's a missing for the European, the boys they've lost through transfer. You know, there's a big change there, you know. And last year at this time, did we ever expect Rangers to go as far in Europe as they did? We've got to be careful of that. And as I say, where we are, the season's just started. You're trying to gel all that together, and it's very, very difficult. I think the good thing I think Rangers have got in their favour, I think they've got a manager who's very astute and knows it. And I'm a big supporter of him because I like the way his teams play. I know maybe started with a back three, and people will question why was Davis. I would question why Davis wasn't playing, and you're playing a midfield player back there, because in games like you're maybe needing Lundstrom in the middle of the pitch with his power and his strength, especially with what you've lost in there. Sure. You know, so there's different ways to look at it, but I definitely wouldn't be over concerned if I was a Rangers supporter with just on one performance. They're more than capable of going back to Ibrox next week and turning the game round, and then they've got another fantastic tie then to look forward to, whether it's Monaco or PSV, and I think that's the way the manager will be trying to sell that to his players. What an opportunity. We've let ourselves down badly in the first one. What a game to come back to Ibrox and try and win. And the Rangers fans last year were magnificent with them at Ibrox. The atmosphere there was incredible, and they'll need something like that next week again.
Colin, what's your team then for Tuesday? What would you do? Well, I give you the team. Let's say in Dortmund we looked at
but
this.
Do you know what I liked
before.
about Gio, who I know pretty well? Sure. You know what I liked about his interview? They'd asked him about new players coming in, and he says no, there was enough experience on that pitch.
Good. Yep.
Enough experience who were on that run. Maybe they didn't play, but they were involved in that run last year. So he doesn't look for excuses, and you could see underneath he was fizzing with that performance. I think he was shell shocked at it.
Colin, you sounded shell shocked as well. What's your team next week? Who do you want to see right back in? And what about Morelos? Do you think he's going to be fit?
I think at best, I think he'll be on the bench. I think, but I don't think he'll be ready to start. I don't think.
Well, he's close to a return, but will he be near enough?
Unless he plays on Saturday right enough. If he can play, get some minutes on Saturday, then that might make a big difference.
That would be a boost. Here's the team, guys, against Dortmund away, when it's probably the best performance of what was an amazing European season. Alan McGregor, the back four was Tavernier, Goldson, Bassey and Barisic. You had Jack and Lundstrom, Scott Arfield, who might have thought last night, what happened to me? I scored at the weekend. Joe Aribo, Ryan Kent, and up front it was Alfredo Morelos. And last night, as you know, you started with McLaughlin, Tavernier, Goldson, Sands and Barisic, Matondo, Kamara, Lundstrom, Jack and Tillman, and up front Cholak. And I know they're brand new, some of these players as well. You know, Tillman, we saw what he could do at the weekend, but throwing them in Europe is different, Barry. We could see it last night. Same for Matondo.
Yeah, they did struggle. Look, I'm not going to paper over the cracks here. It was a poor performance. Some players never get into the game, but you just read out both teams there. There's three of the back four that played last year. There's enough experience. Big John's been involved in goals. You've got Lundstrom, who was immense for Rangers, Ryan Jack. And when you play in these games, and I was speaking to Peter about it, normally when you don't play well, you get 3 or 4 that are off the boil. What surprised me last night, there was 11 of them.
Did anyone get more than 5 or 6 out of 10?
No, they were poor, but listen, it's one of the games where the beauty of football, as I keep saying, there's a game round the corner, and they get away with one. I keep saying it. They'll be flying back last night for Belgium, thinking to themselves, it's only 2-0, and they're lucky to get away with the 2-0.
See, like some Matondo playing, like say Stephen Davis, I think they've always got to have an effect in these games, especially when you're starting out, whether he starts the game and moves someone a little bit wider, because it's an away game. It doesn't matter who you're playing, there's always a little bit of quality in the opposition. Barry will tell you, no matter what teams you've come up against, they surprise you. You know, there's always players on there you think, blimmin' hell, they're a better team than we thought. You know, and I think you've got to keep yourself in the game. So maybe going with the attacker, somebody that's not been tried at that level as often as you would expect, playing for Rangers with an expectation, such a big game, say, well, okay, let's keep ourselves in it, let's do ourselves well enough. To do that, you've got to have your best players, and for me, I still think Davis is one of them. You know, could you have moved Kamara that to the left hand side, the right hand side, or whatever, you know, and just said, right, okay, we'll break for it because it's going to be a difficult game anyway, and play the likes of Davis.
Yeah, Barry?
Stephen Davis, you would always play him. I still think he's got it. I don't care what age he is. He is a guy, he's a proper professional. He looks after himself. He can still play the game, and for me, he could easily still play in that Rangers 11.
See that Dortmund game you were talking about?
Yeah,
I would actually go with as close a team to that as possible for next week. Because really, if you think about it, we've only lost 2 our main players this summer, so that squad's still there, albeit injuries to Kent and Morelos. But if they 2 are back, then it's pretty much the same squad. You're only maybe changing 1 or 2, like say Ben Davis, and maybe bring in Yilmaz instead of Barisic, maybe Tillman instead of obviously Aribo.
Yep, I think both Kent and Morelos, if they train well leading up to the Union game, I think they play.
They're back. We're back just after a quick break. Thanks very much, Colin. 0808 17 17 700.
The Go Radio Football Show with MacklinMotors.com, representing some of the biggest motoring manufacturers across Scotland.
Let's go!
Hope that breakdown at Ibrox has gone for next Tuesday night. Barry, there'll be 50,000 there. There'll be the atmosphere was amazing last year. It went to another level in Europe for Rangers.
Listen, it's all saying they're the 12th man.
Yep.
Look, it's the same way with Rangers and Celtic. I think European nights, players come from foreign teams, and I think they're spooked with the atmosphere.
Absolutely.
The atmosphere is absolute electric.
They'll have to go for it. There'll have to be a different.
I think they'll get behind them.
Yep.
Look, there's a lot of disappointment, a lot of anger, frustration, whatever you want to call it. But come next Tuesday night, the Rangers fans will be out in force and back the team, no doubt about that.
We're going on to the calls again. 0808 17 17 700, and it's red hot as well on the socials at Go Football Show. Jimmy has been on saying, a question for you, Peter, shortly. What about Jota? Why is he not always played through the left-hand side rather than swapped over to the right? I'm not going to ask you just now, but a lot of Celtic fans saying that's where he should be. Rangers fans are on after 2-0 last night. Hey, and I know the penalty was tough. We'll talk about it in a second or two, the VAR decision. But let's speak to Daniel, who's on the line in Wishaw. Hi, Daniel.
you doing, guys?
Evening, Dan.
Yeah, we're fine. Barry's, you're confident for next Tuesday, so
I thought you caught me stretching it. My back's a bit stiff.
He's just getting fit again after the holiday. Yeah,
He's available for next week.
He's available. He might be right. Daniel, what do you think?
Well, as I said, obviously disappointed with the result with that one. Obviously, I feel for Big John. It's a save he should be making, but whether it takes something tiny deflection, it's one of the ones. But I mean, I know John McLaughlin is a good keeper. For the type of games, though, I think he has a future Rangers number one at one point. But last night that had Alan McGregor written all over it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. It was the right height, but I know it's difficult to tell, Barry. Nobody will ever know. Did the deflection play a factor in it?
It was a very slight deflection, but again, I'll go back to it. Big John McLaughlin as a keeper I rate highly, and I would expect him to save that. And I think if you ask Big John himself, he would say the same thing. But this is going to be the debate now, the Rangers fans. Who's going to be the number one? It's clear to me that Gio's made his decision. The first league game of the season, John starts in goals, then again last night, so it looks to me that going forward John McLaughlin is going to be Rangers number one, which, if you ask me, I think it's the wrong call. I think Alan McGregor should be. I don't care what age Alan McGregor is. I think he's 40 now, but he's still a top class goalkeeper for me.
Well, your top two keepers have to be ready to play. They have to be.
Yep.
Same with Stephen Davis.
I mean, I agree with what Daniel says. I think John McLaughlin could be a Rangers number one easy, but you've got Alan McGregor there.
Yeah.
I think that's my always concern. I said to you last year, if Alan stays, he can only stay as your number one. Mm-hmm. That's what I always felt. You know, if he was going to stay at the club, unless it was coaching or whatever, and having that somebody round about you with Rangers, or that what Rangers mean, and helping the boys coming through, and for the big occasions helping the dressing room or whatever, and probably Alan's body's thinking, well, my body's not going to do it. Maybe that's why everybody thought that was his last games, coming on in the cup final and whatever, you know. And that was it, because if he's not going to be fit to play, this is what you're going to have every week. Every time John makes an error,
I know.
You know, you're going to be questioning that Alan McGregor should be in goals. And the same Rangers supporters last year were thinking Alan's time had came with a few mistakes he'd made in certain games, you know. And I think we've got to be very, very careful. I think, as I say, I know John's a very good goalkeeper. Alan McGregor was top quality. I was fortunate enough to work with him, as I say, with the Scotland Barry, and that played with him, but he was top quality. He's had injury issues, obviously, but that was my concern, as I say, was the fact that if he does stay, that this was a question that was going to get asked every time John made an error.
But he did make a couple of. I mean, he made a great save when the boy was through in goal. He did make a brilliant save there. And listen, I would expect that for John McLaughlin. As I said, he is a very good goalkeeper. And the problem John McLaughlin's got is Alan McGregor's there.
Of course.
That's the problem he's got.
Daniel, what else do you want to say to Barry and to Peter and to the Go audience? What do you think? Do you think you can turn it round? Yeah.
I hope so. I really do. As I said, obviously the last season with the atmosphere to come back at Ibrox, it's the noise that came from the crowd at home. It certainly, I think Barry was right. I think it did spook a few teams, such as Dortmund last season. So I think, to agree with Barry again, that there is plenty of quality there. Obviously, we're missing Kent, Morelos, Roof, players that can maybe give something a wee bit different. I thought Yilmaz, when he came on last night, he made a wee bit of a difference. And Cholak, obviously, he was unlucky with that header, but it's something he should be getting on the end of. But no, I think we could definitely turn it back at Ibrox. I think we can.
That was an opportunity, wasn't it, Barry? The ball into the box, and I don't know if he was
a great ball by Tillman, who lit up Saturday's game in the second half. To be honest with you, I was so impressed with him. He was really quiet last night. I don't know whether if he prefers playing centrally in that number 10 and that just behind the main striker, but Cholak would be disappointed not to get his head on it. But he was starved last night. There was no real balls into the box, and it was pretty similar on Saturday when I was at the game at Livingston. there wasn't many deliveries in the first half. Second half, Rangers changed it up, and that's probably one of the things that Gio's went in at half time and says you need to get balls into the box because you need to make defenders defend.
Absolutely, and that's always the case, isn't it, at football? You can look at a striker and you can say, oh, he never done much. But if he doesn't get service,
exactly,
he can make all the fantastic movement, which I must admit, when I've seen Kolak, that's what he does. He moves well. He makes good angles off centre backs and whatever, and wants to get in behind. He wants to go on end of crosses. It was a bit like Giakoumakis with Celtic. People were saying to me last season, he's no good enough. I'm like, listen, watch his movement. His movement's brilliant across the front, but there's no cross coming in. So you've got to serve them, and the players you've got to play has got to suit that type of striker that you have. So I wouldn't be very critical of the striker. If you're not getting the service, it's very, very difficult.
Cholak's not one of these centre forwards that's going to come in and take the ball and link up. He's a penalty box striker. He wants balls into the box for the full-backs, for the wide players, and that's what he feeds off. And last night, I can't remember him. I don't know if Daniel agrees with me here. I don't think he touched the ball. I think once he flashed one across the face of the goal in the first half, but he was starved.
No, I totally agree.
His service, and he's the sort of centre forward. He's different to Morelos. Morelos likes to come in and link up, and then the midfield runners go beyond. But Cholak's one of the players, he likes to be the focal point and get the ball in the box. But Rangers unfortunately didn't do that last night.
Daniel, looking at your bench, so Alan McGregor we've spoken about, Ridvan, you liked to look at him when he came on, Ben Davies, we didn't see a lot, but I mean he's a £4 million player.
Definitely, and I thought Davies, I thought he was, when he came on, he was not too bad. I thought he was alright. I thought he was he looked good, but as I say, even for Barry as well, there's just, for last night I thought even Lundstrom get starved at the ball. Even when he moved to a back three, it was just a bad night in Belgium, basically.
Tavernier as well, your captain, who's been immense.
Yeah, it was just a bad night at the office. And look, I've been there plenty of times. Peter's been there plenty of times.
More often than not.
But the positive thing, see if I'm sitting in that plane, how poor Rangers were last night, below par, whatever way you want to call it, you're still in the tie at 2-0. Daniel, agree with me here, it could have been 3 or 4.
Daniel, you maybe look at that, but then you maybe look at that and think, well, you're talking about John McLaughlin. That save he had maybe becomes so
massive
important
save,
next week.
Peter. Massive save.
And everybody's saying brilliant save by John McLaughlin to get us through to the next round, and God willing, that's what happens.
And then there's a penalty decision which
what
just baffles me.
Yeah, I know. So nobody saw anything, but the VAR officials want to get involved. They looked at it time and time again. It took 4 minutes.
It just baffles me. Look, I'm not going to stand here and kid on that I know the rules, but if that's a penalty, football's in trouble.
The ball's burst.
Yep. Football's in trouble. Now, half a yard, that boy strikes at 60, 70 mile an hour, full on strike. It hits off Sands, then it deflects off Golson, who's half a yard for Sands. What way can
that
Connor
was always
Golson?
the thing, but if it hit any deflection, it was supposed to never be a penalty. If it hit to someone else prior to hitting the hand or the arm, it wasn't supposed to be a penalty, because you go to all these referee meetings and they made that very clear. If it hit your thigh or somebody else's thigh went up onto your hand, no penalty.
I'm not going to say that would have changed the game and Rangers would have got back into it. Listen, Union deserved to win the game, full stop last night, but to give a penalty then to book Connor Golson, he booked Connor Golson.
Yep.
I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Daniel, we know we go on about VAR, and then we say, we need to get VAR, and it just shows you sometimes it goes for you, but other times you wonder if the VAR officials now, because they had a quiet night and then they want in the action. Or is that am I being a bit partisan pro the Scottish team there? You wonder.
I think you're definitely right, and obviously with Barry there, I mean, how is Connor Golson meant to move his arm out the road of that? I mean, to agree with Barry, I mean, if that really is a standard in European football, well, let's just say I think football's well and truly done for, to be honest.
See this natural, unnatural
position.
Look, me and Peter have both played the game. Now, if you go into tackle or go into a player, automatically your arm has to move.
For balance, you were taught as a kid. Get your balance, get your arm out, so you don't fall, balance your body. You know the way you hold your hand.
What do they want you to go in with your hands behind your back?
That's what they're basically saying, isn't it? I know.
It's impossible, but that decision last night, I couldn't believe it.
Well, remember we said it before. Remember it went in La Liga. It got that bad in La Liga. Any time the ball hit your arm, or your hand, it was a penalty kick. So they were that good over there. There was 5 penalties and 4 penalties and 3 penalties in a game, because what they were doing was getting into the box and lobbing the ball up off your hand, and it was an automatic penalty.
Yeah, cynically.
Yeah. So they had to stop it.
Hate it.
They stop
Crazy.
it because of that, you know. So that's the situation we're getting to again, I think.
And you know, they're talking about VAR now. They're going to, just after the game, tell you a transcript of what's been said in the VAR.
But I'll give you another thing. Listen to Gio after the game, they asked him the question, and he never used that as an excuse.
I thought he spoke fantastic.
And you like that?
No, I do. Yeah. I do. Yeah. I've got to be honest with you. I think Gio and Postecoglou are so honest after each game. I thought Gio last night, you could tell he was fuming underneath, but he was very honest.
Is he going to say to the power brokers now, right, I know there's 29 days to go, and for you, Daniel, and for the Rangers fans, do you not want to say, you want a bit of clarity? Is Morelos definitely staying, which we think he is? The captain, is it a new contract, which we think is coming? And Ryan Kent, because if anyone doubted the value of that guy, you need to get him signed up. Do you think he should be saying to the power brokers, let's get it sorted? We saw a few shots of them, you know, in the telly up there in the back row. Time to get a few signatures.
Oh, definitely. I mean, obviously with Ryan Kent, for what he brings to the team in Europe is something totally different. Morelos, for me, he's proved it time and time again. He's defenders don't like him. He's that much a handful. He can hold the ball up well. He can roll a defender quite easily, and I think the boy loves it. And in European nights, he loves it. I think he feeds off it more than anything else. He's not maybe everybody's best fan, but he gives his goals, which last night I thought we were missing something, such as a Morelos up there to aggravate their defenders. Their centre backs were big guys, but with Morelos, I thought if Morelos was on the park, he could hold it up a wee bit, kind of give Cholak something to move for. No, I think we just need a wee bit of clarity for the two of them. Are they staying or are they gone? Because I think the two of them are important.
And Daniel, every one of the pundits have been saying it's really close. The two squads are really strong. But last night, you thought, certainly looking at it, you think Celtic's squad at the moment looks stronger. I know they're not in they'll be in a few weeks' time in Europe. But were you a bit worried last night that the lack of experience on the pitch? Yeah,
a wee bit. I mean, I just thought last night. I mean, you would never have thought that it was a Champions League qualifier last night. The way they were playing, they were thinking, this is it. You just thought it was such a flat performance. Just there was no drive for anybody. I thought even Ryan Jack was a wee bit off the pace. I thought we get bullied in some areas of the pitch last night. And then when going forward.
The first goal as well.
Aye, pretty much. And I mean, I said,
Daniel, I was going to say, you can speak about Big John should have saved it. But before that, Barisic's got to do better. Ryan Jack into the box, then Sands. Can he get out to his man? So that's something that Gio will go back and look in the video and think to yourself, right, do you know what? It's not just about Big John McLaughlin here. This should have been stopped at source. So look, it was just I was sitting watching the game last night and I'm thinking to myself, do these guys know this is a Champions League qualifier? Yeah. And I expected more, and that's what kind of surprised me when I was watching it. It's worth 35+ million. Yeah. As a football player, where do you want to play? Champions League is where the big guns are, the big teams, best players.
And that's what Gio will probably want as well, so he can get some money to bring some people in.
So you have to ask the question then, if there's 35 to 40 million, was it a mistake to sell Calvin Bassey and Joe Aribo?
No, you've got to take that money, Paul. You've got to take that money. Can you wait to the 31st of August? If somebody's coming in with 22 million plus and you've only bought the kid for 230 grand 24 months ago, you've got to take that kind of money.
But you need the rest of the squad.
It's very rarely do you have so many players going with listening to these and listening to everybody talking after the game. Very rarely do you have everybody not playing particularly well. Managers usually say in big games you can maybe afford one player or two players not playing particularly well, and that's maximum, you know. So when you're talking about 10 players, 11 players not playing at their best, you're hoping you're going to get the complete opposite next week and get a performance, whoever that 11 is going to be, because you know that this is when the support counts as well, which they did fantastically well last year for them. You know, it was magnificent, like watching the games at Ibrox, and it's not very often I say that. But it was brilliant watching them, you know, and they'd done fantastic. The players responded to it, everybody responded to it. But as you say, if you're not getting performances like that, there's a couple of the younger boys coming in, and it's maybe spooked them, the importance of Rangers. You know, what it is, because you can sign as a Rangers player, but it's not to the big games. Do you know, are they a Rangers player? And I've always said that, you know, you can buy players, you can whatever. When do they become a Rangers player? You soon notice in the big games, can they perform in the big games? It's the same at Celtic. That's when you know they can come for all the money they want, but can they handle that pressure and the expectation that goes along with it?
Daniel, final point from you. What would you say to, you know, the Rangers bosses listening to the show? Who do you want to see back in, and what would your quick team talk be before Tuesday night?
Well, who I would like to see back in, obviously, you want to see Morelos back in the park next Tuesday. Kent also. As I said, probably for me, and Barry will probably agree, Big John, he's not done a lot wrong, but to me, for the big European games, you want your best. Because let's be fair, Big McGregor's like a Rolls Royce in between the sticks. He's that good. So I think the boys just need to know that this is a big game. It could change the club's finances drastically, just with getting through. So I would say that they need to pull their socks up and they need to go for it.
The Go Radio Football Show with MacklinMotors.com, representing some of the biggest motoring manufacturers across Scotland.
Let's go!
Chris was speaking about it's a bit sluggish at the moment around Govan. That can't be the story next Tuesday, Barry, around Govan. It won't be. The pace will be completely different.
No, I think you'll see a different Rangers team performance. No, and I'm not thinking about next Tuesday. They've still got a game on Saturday. They've got Kilmarnock who are going to come and play similar in terms of they're going to sit behind the ball and try and frustrate them at the game at Ibrox on Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Gio will make a few changes, and as I said, look, I think there's quite a few positions up for grabs.
But Barry, has that ever been like different? You know, Rangers going to play or Celtic going to play?
It's always the same.
Always the same. No matter where you go. Everybody wants to stop you playing, you know, or drop off you and make it difficult for you to play. So they're used to that now. That's the way they play. You know, they're expected to attack and win games, and that's the expectation of playing for Celtic and Rangers, that you've got to go and attack and win games of football. How you do it, you have to find a way.
So that's the headline today. We're looking back at last night. 2-0 Rangers lost, but as Barry said, that could have been worse. That could have been 3 or 4, and you reckon they will turn it round?
Yeah, as you just said there, if I'm a player or a supporter coming back last night, I'm thinking to myself, they got away with one there, because the tie could have been over. It could have been over. There's every chance of that, but now it's not. 2-0 Rangers at home. You know what the crowd, Peter spoke about it before, the crowd will always get behind them, the noise that they make, and I think the Union SG players wouldn't have sampled an atmosphere that they're going to sample next Tuesday, so that could be in Rangers' favour.
Good point. Awaiting, it's either PSV, who were 1 up until late on, then Monaco equalised, but that's for next week, isn't it, Peter? There's no point in thinking just now.
Absolutely. No, it sounds crazy, but probably Monaco or PSV first would have suited Rangers, because then everybody would get into it. Because remember, I said as soon as this team came out and their name was just slightly different, and I can tell you the players psychologically at times, because you don't know who someone is, there is sometimes a wee switch that's not on. You know, whereas if you know you're going to play a Monaco or a PSV, you have to be your best. Last night, by all accounts, they weren't, and they didn't get the performance. And as you say, you can carry 1 or 2 players, not a full team, that's for sure.
Is it easier for you as a player when you're up against a big name?
Well, you know the best players will always punish you. You know it all the time. But as you say, once you get into that sloppiness, it does have that domino effect, as I say. When you're playing against the big teams, you know you don't get 5 minutes. You do come away getting beat 3, 4 and 5. You know, so maybe that's the beauty of it. The Rangers are still in it. John said the massive save. It stayed at 2-0, and Rangers are more than capable of getting that back.
Right. See when the draw's made, there's no bad teams that are getting into the Champions League qualifier. They're unknown.
Yeah,
I've come up against teams before where you don't know too much about them. You watch them on video and you think, they look okay, until actually you're on the pitch and you play against these players, whether they're from Israel, from Eastern European, Belgium, or wherever they're from. These guys are technically very good football players.
Yeah.
Before that game, we've got this weekend. So you mentioned there about Rangers against Kilmarnock, Ross County against Celtic. We asked earlier about Jota. We want to ask you as well, Barry. Peter, some people on the socials and Celtic fans have been saying, Jota, what a goal at the weekend. Apparently the shirts with Jota in the back of it are flying out of the Celtic store and elsewhere. Right, what about Jota? What's your view? Should he switch wings the way he has been?
I prefer him on the left, because I think he's got that quality. He comes in his right foot, but also allows the fullback to go up the outside of him. But you could see on Saturday, as soon as he moved over there, he looked more at home. And I can understand why the manager does it, because Maeda does fantastic, at doing what he does well. But I think just because Jota's got such a... He should actually slip one in for Kyogo. He's come in and outside and he's went for the lob over the goalkeeper. Top players, and I could see the manager getting a bit frustrated with him. He should have shoved it in Kyogo at an empty net. He's got that quality, but I think he's got more of that quality when he plays on the left, because it's more natural. The pitch opens up for him. Very rarely do you see him going down the outside on the right hand side. Very rarely. He does it, and he's got a great delivery. But more importantly for him, he likes to get a shot at goal. The full pitch opens up for him. He's still got a pass on. He sees a pass, and he's obviously his goal on Saturday. Me personally, I prefer him on the left, but I can understand the manager's dilemma, really, because Maeda gives you so much. But when you look at the start of last year, Abada and Jota was your two wide players, and they'd done fantastically well. The two of them were excellent, very exciting going forward, and that was, I thought, was fantastic. I didn't think anybody would move them. Now all of a sudden you've got Maeda playing out there, and I can see why the manager plays him, because he does everything else, and maybe not got that individual quality of a Jota, who's got a match winner in that respect, but Maeda gives you something for the team that I know the manager loves.
The work rate. Barry, what's your view?
Play him on the right.
On September the 3rd? No, that's a month. We're on the countdown.
Yeah, no, listen, I think he's a fantastic footballer. Look, he's a match winner. Didn't know anything about him, I've got to be honest, like probably everybody in Scotland. But for me on the left side, he causes all sorts of problems. Peter's mentioned that he floats in and out, and he allows a fullback to overlap or whatever, but he just, to me, he looks happier on the left hand side. But I can see why he wants to play Maeda. As a player, I used to love players like that. His work rate is phenomenal. He remembers me a wee bit of Neil McCann. That's what he was like when I played with Neil McCann. He would always be in my starting 11, because not just a very good player, he was a real team player, and that's what Maeda is. He puts in some shift for the Celtic team. But for me, Jota on the left hand side of the Celtic front three is a real danger.
Are you worried about, Barry, about the strength of the Celtic squad when you looked at Rangers last night, or is it very different because it's a European game?
I'm not going to read off one game, Paul. I look at both squads and I don't think there's anything between them. You look at both benches. I mean, I was at the Rangers game on Saturday. You look at the bench, any of the players could easily fill into the starting 11, and it was the same when I watched the Celtic game on Sunday. You look at the bench, he brings the three Japanese boys on, he brings Turnbull, he brings Giacomakis on, and Abada.
It's not bad.
Any of the three could easily play in the Celtic team, so that's the strength and depth that both teams have got. But watching that last night, of course you are going to be slightly worried at the performance. But I'm sure Gio will get them in tomorrow, and they'll go through that video and they'll come out flying out of traps on Saturday.
How good this season do you think David Turnbull's going to be? Because he missed a lot of last season, and then they brought in the Japan, the Hatate, and all the chat about really good midfielders. Peter, is this going to be a big year for him?
God willing, he stays fit, because I think he'll be a massive player. I think he's got goals in him. He likes to run in the opposition box. On Saturday, I thought, even when he came on in the cameo, I thought Celtic get a grip of the game again, because I thought the game was scrappy then. I thought the ball kept changing over. There was a bit of frustration with the players that turning the ball over. He came on and made it look simple. There was about 3 or 4 times he's running in the box with nobody picking him up and never get picked out. There was one, probably the only one I'd call it a poorer touch, was the ball came out the air, and he's made a fantastic run, and it was only his poor touch or he'd have scored. And I definitely think as a midfield player now, especially, as Barry will tell you, especially if you're playing with one striker now, it's so important that your midfield fire in with goals, and I think Turnbull does that better than any of them, arriving in the box and getting goals. And it'd be fantastic for Scotland as well, and Celtic, that if this kid can stay fully fit, because he brings something different to what we don't already have.
He looks so positive. He had the assist, didn't he?
It was top quality, but it was a simple pass. But he'd done that all the game when he came on. And that's what I'm saying. But he also gets in the box and gets on the end of things. He makes fantastic runs into the box and very rarely gets picked up. And as I say, that's a trait that's not often there with midfield players now. Everybody wants the ball. As Barry's talking about the wingers now, they don't do the wee short and spin, do the opposite runs, come short to go along, all this sort of stuff. There's not that types of movement now. He does that as a midfield player. He's got that willingness to run in the box.
It's a dying breed. The late runner for midfield. David Turnbull does it brilliant for Celtic. Scott Arfield does it for Rangers. But in terms of David Turnbull, there's no doubt he's got the ability to play in that starting 11. It's just who does he play? Callum McGregor's 100% going to play. Is he going to play in front of Hatate or O'Reilly? Is he as good as him? I think he's every bit as good as him. But that's what you need in that kind of area. You need quality, you need competition for places. But he's certainly got the capabilities to play in the Celtic starting 11.
Peter, are you worried about the builder, Matt O'Reilly, with James Matt? That's what they're calling him. It's an old faulty towers. Look it up. It's the builder. Apparently,
did you tell me that joke?
Celtic fans are like, no, it's just if you look at the faulty towers. Are you worried about it? Because obviously James Maddison, he's wanted by Newcastle. Brendan Rodgers, Leicester are the only team in Europe, top 5 team, who haven't bought anyone this summer. So they're in with a 50 million for James Maddison. It's been rejected. And the worry is from Celtic fans' point of view.
He's different from Maddison. I know Maddison for a kid being at Norwich. I knew when he came up to Aberdeen and all that. He's friendly with our Raymond. So I know him. And I know him as a player. But he's completely different type of player to Matt. Matt's a midfield player. James is that number 10 position who's got that fantastic quality. Matt's a wonderful player. He's only going to get better the more games he plays, and I said that was the big thing, my big concern, that he continued to keep playing games because he's a better player the more games he plays. He'll be one of these guys that don't want to be rested because the wee shine goes off their performance. He'll want to play all the time, get the 90 minutes he's in, and he's got fantastic quality. But as I've said before, if you're at Celtic and Rangers, you want all the top teams coming and looking for your players because it means your team are doing well. Look at Rangers, the money they made last year for the sales they had. That's why it happens, because your team are being successful and your top players are playing well. The big difference now is Rangers got top money for their players. We got it for Kieran Tierney when he was playing at his highest level. We got all that sort of money, your Moussa Dembele's. So you want everybody to be coming chapping your door because it means your team are playing well. But I'm sure Matt will stay at Celtic.
Kieran Tierney, we'll talk about him in the second half of the programme because he's revealed that he struggled with his move to London and he's opened up about losing friends to suicide. And we know he's from North Lanarkshire. We heard it on the news this morning with Joe Maguire that the incidence of especially male suicide there, young men, is too high. It's too high everywhere. And it must be tough at times for players, Peter, because do you spend a lot of time on your own once you've gone to training for a couple of hours?
Yeah. Well, when I moved down to England 25, 26 years ago, whenever it was, I was in a hotel for 3 months, without your family. And I've just 2 young kids at 2, and Raymond was only 9 months, I think, at the time. Peter was 2.5, I think. And that's difficult, even being away from your family as an older player. I could only imagine young players going away now. And it's okay, people saying you get helps at the clubs or you can off the phone to someone. But when the phone goes down, you're on your own again. And listen, Barry will tell you now, see even when you stop playing, I find it difficult at times because you think, I've lost my job. This is the first summer I've never been working. So you're thinking, well, what do I do now? We weren't told if you'd done anything else, you were looked upon as if you weren't interested in football. So you never learnt any other skills. So you find a lot of your time, or what will I do now? You're trying to make things to do to keep yourself busy because you've been used to working all the time. And I find that difficult. And so I can understand young kids, never mind, has not had that, even that career. They've not had anything to do. And that's why people say don't go into retirement because you don't want to be sitting in the house doing nothing. So I can understand these boys, and it really is out there, and especially all the things you see on social media now. I think then they go on their phone and they look and see people criticising them. I'm talking about footballers here, criticising them. And it's a lot of time. And no matter if somebody says 100 good things about them, they'll look at the one thing that is said negative. And that's the one thing that will sit in their mind.
We're going to go for the news. We're going to return to that in part 2.
The Go Radio Football Show with MacklinMotors.com, representing some of the biggest motoring manufacturers across Scotland.
Let's go!